Thank you very much, Talise. Good morning, everyone. My name's Tom Gonzalez. I'm vegetable crop specialist with Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development. I'd like to welcome you to the 6th webinar of this year's 2021 Horticulture School Summer Webinar Series. Our horticulture school team includes staff from Manitoba Agriculture, Agri-Food Canada, and Assiniboine Community College. And all of us are very pleased to be able to provide extension information to horticulture producers and to industry representatives as well. Today's webinar will be in the form of Q&A. Those attendees, if anyone has any questions regarding horticulture production, please type them into the question and answer feature on your screen, and we'll do our best to provide you with answers. The discussion today will focus on horticulture crop issues such as excessive heat, lack of water, pests, diseases, etc. Before we begin, Talise, can you launch the poll questions for today, please?
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and launch this first question here. So you're going to see it's, how do you see yourself within the horticulture industry? So select one of your best answers. So producer of horticulture crops, work in agri-supply, agribusiness, government or university personal, or other. So I do see the answers are coming in. And we might have all the answers now. Did you want me to close the poll?
That'd be great.
All right. So looks like we have our results, which are, there's 25%, which are producer of horticulture crops. We have 25% who work in the agri-supply, agribusiness, and we have 50% that are government or university personnel, sorry.
Okay, if you went to question 2, that would be great. Thank you.
Question 2, we have, if you are a horticulture producer, what size is your farm? 0 to 4.9 acres, 5 to 14.9 acres, 15 to 49.9 acres, or 50 plus acres? We have 20% of people who have voted now.
And some of them may not be producers, so that might be as high as we'll get.
All right, we have 30% people who have voted. Did you want me to go ahead and close that poll?
That would be great, thank you.
All right, so our results were 33% were 0 to 4.9 acres, and 67% are 5 to 14.9 acres.
Okay, that's interesting. That helps us. Could you move to question 3, please?
So question 3, if you are a horticulture producer, how much of a problem are diseases and or pests on your farm this year? Less than average, average, or above average? We have 10% of people have voted so far.
Maybe we can get a little more than 10. Well, if we're stalled out.
27 now.
Okay. Yeah, I would think that's probably good enough. It's a representation.
Right. Perfect. So we're going to close that poll. So our answers are 50% was less than average and 50% was average.
Oh, okay. So if you could launch the final question, that would be great.
So our final question If you are a producer, how has the extreme heat and lack of rainfall and or water for irrigation affect your crops this season? Little to no effect and or loss, some effect and or loss, or major effect and or loss. So we have 36% of people who have voted.
Okay. Well, that's right in the same sort of range that we've had before when we're asking producer questions. So I guess we could close it.
All right. So it looks like 25% of participants had little to no effect and or loss. 50% had some effect and or loss, and 25% had major effect and or loss.
Well, thanks very much, Talise, for doing that. That sure helps us out. I appreciate all the attendees who took the time to answer the questions. It just helps us out when we're trying to get a handle on who's on the webinars and what kind of situations producers are facing this year. So I'd just like to start today's conversation by welcoming Vikram Bisht. He is Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development's horticulture pathologist. And Vikram and I had earlier in this webinar series had a short discussion on some environmental effects on the crop this year with the heat and lack of rainfall, but we're getting more questions coming in all the time related to effect of excess heat, lack of water, that kind of thing. And Vikram, what are you seeing? What do you want to start with?
As we know that the rainfall has been very limited, and in some places irrigation has been limited as well. The river waters and streams have been very, very low, and some of the growers who are watering or irrigating from that area are facing troubles actually. In Portage area, there were restrictions put on people taking water from the
from the Elm, LaSalle, and Mill Creek.
Elm River, LaSalle, and that was because water was being redirected for domestic use, and the irrigation for the vegetable crops was restricted for some time. Then there was water release from the Shellmouth Dam, which helped the Assiniboine, which was then used for pumping water into the Elm LaSalle streams, and the irrigation restrictions were then removed for some. So that's the situation that has been in relation to the irrigation for commercial people. However, those people who have had their own retention ponds and were able to use the snow or the stream nearby to fill them up have been able to irrigate nicely. As compared to the potatoes, the vegetable sector has been much better off because none of the vegetables are, you can say, done dry land, and so the crops should be reasonably good.
Well, just one of the things that kind of comes up in discussion a lot is irrigation versus rainfall. Like if a producer goes out and puts on 3/4 of an inch or an inch of irrigation, it's never like an inch or 3/4 of an inch of rain.
Correct.
It certainly assists the crop. It's better than not putting water on. I'm not saying that, but it doesn't equate 100% an inch of rain to an inch of irrigation.
Correct, because the rain is all over on the farm, and it even if it recharges the 6 inches or up to a foot, whereas when you are irrigating, it is only in that restricted area, and with time the water will be soaked away, and so it isn't the same.
Right.
Because of this heat, there have been certain issues on the crops, a lot of flower abortions on the vegetable crops, and that may have had been also because I wonder if there is lesser insect activity for pollination of some of our crops. There are a few photographs that I would like to share with you. Okay, here we have a squash that was being grown by one of the farms, and the grower sent us a picture as to what is happening. So from one of these photographs that we see, which is not very well focused, what I can make out is that it is an immature fruit, and it may have been in the crop canopy, hidden and well shaded with probably high humidity. And so there may be in his field quite a few aborted fruits. That is, they almost form, but then they die off, or basically don't grow anymore. So from the photograph, I can understand that's about 6 inches or so. The immature or rotting on the distal end indicates that there is a lot of humidity or moisture available. This could be a black rot or didymala, which is quite common in our squashes and pumpkins and all. So there are a lot of fungicides possible, but one of the best ways to handle this will be to harvest only mature fruits. And if something appears to be immature, don't bring it in.
Right, and I think too, going back to when you were talking about a flower abortion, the other part, in some cases, I'm seeing a fair bit of in grower fields is incomplete fertilization. Basically, the heat in most of these cases has caused partial fertilization. So you have let's say it was a zucchini, just to pick an example. It would be sort of half a zucchini and the rest just rots away, kind of thing. It's certainly not marketable. So yeah, that's quite common as well. And yeah, other than timely irrigation and not over irrigating, there's really not a lot we can do about the temperature effects.
So those are heat-related issues that some cooling effect of the irrigation may help, but not much. No. So that is the luck of the draw for this year.
Sorry, we're just having a little techno difficulty. There we go.
Okay, this is a picture that we have discussed a few times. And I want to emphasize again, those people who have greenhouses or have plant species which are sensitive to spider mite infestation, this can be a serious issue in plastic houses, whether it's fruits or vegetables. And Tom and Anthony have been very effectively using predatory mites for biological control of this spider mites. And here you can see badly infested leaf on the left side, and then after you can say a few days or a week, the predatory mites were able to keep the leaves very clean. And this is quite important because once you have the defoliation, the productivity goes down and probably the quality of the fruits.
Definitely the quality as well. Like when you said that, for example, in cucumbers, when if the infestation gets out of hand, which it can very easily, your long English cucumber that's trellised and hanging down, that should be nice and straight to be aesthetically acceptable to the marketplace, will develop a hook in it just from the stress of the spider mites depleting the plant of resources.
Yeah, it's a bit too late, but in strawberries also, these mites and thrips can cause a fair amount of issues. And so here we have given an example of the biological control supply company, Copert. There are other companies as well. So this came up, and so I thought I'll show it here. There are some insecticides that can be used for the thrips and spider mites. I get calls quite often, Vikram, what can I spray? And if you keep this list handy, make a printout or write it somewhere, it is a good resource. It tells you what are the common names and the pesticide example from that group, and where it works or it's a waste of time or money to spray some insecticide which has no activity on either of these two. For example, if you're putting ambush or you're putting 7, you are basically doing nothing.
You're giving them a shower.
Yeah, they may be saying, thanks for cleaning us. But other than that, it is not very useful. So there are biological controls coming up in the market. Here is another one, Botanigard, and this is Bavaria bassiana, and this is also commercially available. So if you have problems with these insects in your gardens or farms, it may be a very, you can say, friendly way, environmentally friendly way to manage these without spraying chemicals. Here is something that I found in my own planting. We have a small plot of tomatoes which are not sprayed with any fungicide because this one is supposed to be a sentinel plot for late blight disease. So if we don't spray fungicide, we can basically have the plants show infections right away, because tomatoes are very sensitive to late blight. But in that particular plot, one Roma plant was showing this kind of disease symptoms. And here the leaves look reasonably okay. There's some mottling, but there's no serious cupping or deformation. The fruits on top that were there are, you can say, brownish spots, circular, and some of the small fruits had basically fallen off from the plant. So I have collected it, and I'm going to be sending it to virology lab to identify what it could be. It does not appear to be fungal, and I'm showing this just in case you come across some diseases or symptoms which you have not seen and your plants start looking very funny. Then I would like to know, because highly contagious, basically easily transmitted by touch. And so that's okay. Here is an example of another disease which you may confuse with this. And it is possible that what I have is tomato spotted wilt virus, but this particular disease is transmitted by thrips, which you can see on the right side. They are minute, almost 1 millimeter, maybe 2 millimeter in size. And these also produce circular spots. However, one of the important things that I did not see in the other plants was the bronzing of the leaves or browning of the leaves on top. And then these leaves will then later become crinkly. I had in 2019 gone to quite a few farms which had this problem, and we were able to control, but it was too late for some of the planting. So if you see anything like this in your fields, please let us know and we can try to identify.
I think too, one of the things that we could discuss here is the idea of environmental effects this year, you know, with the extreme wind, extreme heat, lack of rainfall. I've seen in more than one farm some muskmelon vines that were on the end of a field. Well, in one case on the end of the field, the wind kind of rolled them up almost, and some of the muskmelons that were nicely in the canopy were all of a sudden exposed, and that became very soft, very.
They got suntanned.
They got a tan, all right, and a wind burn, and yeah, and again, it wasn't turned out to, in my opinion, to not be a disease per se, but I think in years with extremes of some of the things we're seeing this year, way of climate, we're going to see things that may be interpreted as a disease and might not be. But it's good to find out what they are.
Yes. And you brought up a good point that this year has been so dry, windy, dusty, and thrips and spider mites, they get moved around very easily in that conditions. And so if there is a problem, it will spread very quickly. Now, there's another disease that CFI, Canadian Food Inspection Agency, had alerted all growers, greenhouse as well as field growers through provincial officials that this particular disease called tomato brown rugose fruit virus, that is a restricted disease. It is mostly, I will talk about it later, it affects tomatoes, peppers, not known to affect potatoes yet. There's some research work going on. Weeds and petunias may also act as reservoirs. Anyone who grows eggplants and potatoes probably will not see it, even though they may have the problem. So this is what the fruit looks like. Brown, patchy, or you can say dark green mottling on the immature fruits as well. Leaves are crinkly, but I have more pictures of this here. It basically causes mosaic, leaf mottling. The leaves become narrow, and the fruit, it has a blotchy pale yellow and sometimes necrotic spots. So here on the left side at the bottom, you can see that there are some irregular maturing of the fruit, and it may appear to be circular, but basically you can see that your fruit shape, fruit color is not normal, and the loss can be anywhere from 10 to 100%. Depends on what market you are going to be sending it to. Here's another picture from Michigan State University where they have done, you can say, greenhouse inoculations. And so these are the typical disease pictures. And you can see that the fruits, they can be anywhere from very nicely formed to very poorly formed with a lot of necrotic or browned out areas. And sometimes they have what you call leprosy kind of pockmarks. This particular disease is highly transmitted. So if you have one or two and you are handling or cleaning out or harvesting, you will be able to easily transfer this disease to the other plants. This is especially serious for commercial greenhouse operations where basically the whole greenhouse will have to be destroyed. Or the plants will have to be destroyed if this disease comes in.
And then the cleanup to be able to start a crop again, you're losing the crop, but you're also incurring costs in the sense of cleanup prior to starting a new crop. It's a double whammy.
Yeah, this disease is mostly in Mexico. Some states in the US have seen it, not very commonly seen in Canada, but I have seen symptoms which are very similar to this and sent my samples for virus identification. But at that time, we didn't know about the existence of this problem in Canada. So the virologist did not even check for this virus. So it may have been missed. That was in 2017. So just to give you that information. So anytime you see very strange looking fruits or plants, please take a picture, good focus, and we can try to understand what it is.
Yeah, it helps, I think, everybody to properly identify something. Environmental problem, disease, whatever it is, rather than guessing, oh, this looks like X or whatever, you know.
And when you send pictures, please send some information along with, rather than just the photograph and say, what is this? So that will help us to help identify quicker and probably more complete. And with that, I will go to the next one. Yes, I had another suggestion. We have very good cameras these days with most people. So a very important or helpful tip to take a picture is to touch the screen on the spot where you want to focus. The camera will automatically focus on that. Very often I get pictures where they say, what is this? And the main subject is out of focus, but the ground is nice in focus. So I tell them, you know, the top is very well spread out and the plots are very clean, but I cannot tell what crop it is.
Yeah, it certainly helps to have a good picture, and a picture isn't always going to be enough either. You know, sometimes you need a sample too, but a good picture is a great start.
Yes, and in some places I was noticing there are a lot of aphids on tomatoes. It may not be an issue right now, but tomatoes can spread virus diseases, and some of these viruses can go onto the potato crops. Not a big issue, but just for interest's sake. Here's a picture which you can say I took with the aphids and how they're hanging on the root hair, the hairs on the branches, but this still is not the best picture that could be. The bottom picture is some of these aphids that I got from this tomato plant. And strangely enough, many of these aphids had fungal growth on the legs. And these aphids were not moving when I tried to, collect them. And it is probably because they had gumbo legs. When we have shoes and walk on clay, muddy places. So I think this may be a example of biological control happening without our knowledge.
That's a good thing. I'd
Yes.
like to see slower aphids that aren't rampaging through the crop.
Yes, the aphids, they just like to probe into the plant and then move on. But for whatever reason, these aphids were not moving. What these aphids do by probing is transmit viruses, and a 1 second probe is good enough to transmit. This one is just out of interest for some people who may want to try ethnic vegetables. This vegetable is called bottle gourd or calabash, lauki, and it is used as a vegetable, and in some countries they are also dried and used as utensils, and in some places musical instruments. So non-traditional is still there. So this is a very popular vegetable in South Asian or Southeast Asian, you can say, markets. So if you're looking into that, there are 1 or 2 growers who have ventured into this. It's very interesting plant, and here is why it is interesting. It has a female flower that is on the left, and which has a stigma opened up, and then on the right side you have a female flower and a male flower. There's slight difference, and the insects are the main, you can say, pollinators in this. So if you have good bee activity, wasp activity, flies, you will have good fruit formation. But if you are a commercial grower, I think one of the best things is to collect the male flowers, harvest the pollen, and then with a airbrush pollinate the stigma, and you will have very good fruiting. I have some of these plants at home, and my success is, you can say, 25% of the potential fruit is aborted because I don't have time for that pollination. So just for interest's sake.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'd like to see you take a bottle gourd and make it a musical instrument, and then give us a little presentation one day.
We will do that.
One of the things I noticed yesterday when we were doing a pepper harvest, and I came across this pepper, and if it were on, say, a tomato, that symptomology, I'd be thinking, I wonder if that's stink bug damage. And Vikram and I were talking about this a little earlier. I've never seen it on peppers before, but the damage looks very similar to what the damage stink bugs do. So thoughts,
Yeah.
Vikram?
I agree with Tom. The pinpoints that you see on the fruit around the light green or yellowish halo is quite indicative that it is an insect cause issue, and most probably there are some stink bugs in the high tunnel.
Oh, definitely. There are stink bugs in there. I have not seen damage on peppers before, though.
Okay.
I've seen the damage on tomatoes before, but not
Yes.
on peppers. Either I've just missed it, or they've developed an affinity towards peppers, possibly.
Yeah. So for those who are growing peppers and tomatoes, please be on the lookout for the stink bugs. There may be certain insecticides that may be useful at this time, because you may not want to lose the fruits that you already have now.
Yeah, it would be a shame to have brought especially for a pepper, colored pepper that is demanding a little bit more in the marketplace than your average green pepper, to lose that potential income just because at this stage stink bugs decided to chow down on your crop. Just gonna see if we got any questions showing up. Okay, I see one here. We are noticing more mildews, powdery or I can't, my glasses. Downy mildew this year. Do you know why? Because it hasn't been very humid in our area.
That's a very good question, Danielle. There is enough humidity for the mildews to still infect. Actually, overnight, there is enough moisture for the leaves to be wettish, but not dripping with the dew, and that is enough. Also, the powdery mildew does not require a lot of moist leaves. So what you are seeing on some of your crops is powdery mildew, and humid, cool nights will do it. And then during the days when it is dry, it will continue to infect. So yes, powdery mildew is probably more in some places, but it has been generally lower. In our cucumber crops, we don't see it as much. So it may also be the microclimate where your garden is. So yes, it is powdery mildew. Downy mildew I have seen only in 2 crops this year, grapes, and you can easily identify the downy mildew on grapes with the fuzz on the what do you call the grape fruit?
The panicle of grapes.
Yeah, you can see the whole fruit is completely covered with the mildew. That is a very severe case of you can say not cleaning out last year's problem, or it has just come in and there was enough moisture on the grape leaves. The other crop was quinoa, and within the crop canopy, there has been enough moisture to allow the downy mildew of quinoa to also become quite established. So it does not always require, you can say, free-flowing wet leaves. Moist overnight, a few hours is enough for many of these things to cause infection. I hope that helps. But if you need more information on how to manage on the crops that you have, I have given presentations on downy mildews, on pumpkins and squash, and how to manage. So I can resend that to you if you contact Tom or I.
Yeah, that's no problem. We can
yes,
we can push that out. One of the things too that I've had questions about, not so much, I thought of it because of the question regarding the mildews here, but in some of the vine crops, especially, they're all fairly big leaves, eh? And there's almost been a bronzing to some leaves, like a combination of the heat and the wind and the fact the leaf is so huge that a lot of times it just doesn't look the way it does in quotes a normal year. It's not so much that it is a disease or anything like that. It's just growing in less than ideal conditions, and it becomes a little more leathery. And I'm sure it's not as efficient at producing photosynthate for the plant and things like that. So the plant suffers a little bit, but I've had three calls from 3 different growers in 2 different areas of the province, with generally that being the primary issue that they're having. Not a disease, but yet it's affecting their yield.
Yes.
I'll just see if we got any questions that I've missed here. I don't see any more. If anybody has any questions, you can type them in the chat. Anything you'd like to, we're a little over half an hour in, Vikram, anything you'd like to add before we call it a day?
I would want to get some photographs from whoever is listening. If you have any issues with vegetables or small fruits, and we'll try to see what we can help you with. One of the things that I can add here is, even though it is very dry, in irrigated plots of vegetables, the crop canopy is so good or so lush that the microclimate is actually wet. So many of the diseases of wet conditions like sclerotinia, white mold, or botrytis, which is gray mold, can be rotting some of the produce underneath.
Right.
And so it may be helpful to remove some of those bottom leaves which are just yellowing and not doing anything other than create a very wet microclimate.
Yeah, and again here, I think it becomes a question of economics when you're looking at things like leaf removal and that. You know, in an ideal world, certainly you get rid of some of the sources of potential disease for any inoculum that's around to start in on, you know, but you have to weigh that with the cost of doing that. One of the costs of not doing it can be severe problems. So yes. I think it's reasonable to be looking to do that. Well, let's I'm going to get my mouse to work here. I can't seem to get my mouse to work. Is anyone on there could look at the Q&A one more time? I can't seem to get my mouse to function. Delise, can you see the Q&A?
I can. It doesn't look like any more has come in at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us, and that we will be sending a link, a link to the recording of this presentation out, maybe not this week, but as soon as it becomes available, we'll get it out. And the next webinar will be in 2 weeks from today. And in the run up to it, I'll be sending something out with what the content will be, and anyone who has any suggestions for future content, feel free to let me know, or any member of our group know, and we'll try to accommodate that. So thanks very much for taking the time, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.